Hannah, hi.
Liz. Thanks for being here, Liz.
Thanks for having me. We're live at Tracy Morgan Gallery in Asheville, which is very exciting to celebrate your book launch because you wrote a book.
I can't believe it. Thank you.
Yeah. Taxes for Humans.
Thank you.
I'm excited to dive in all about this book. You've said that this book comes from a place of frustration and almost like humiliation when it comes to learning about working with accountants as an artist. I'd love to hear more about what really drove you to write this book.
Yeah. Well, when I was just out of art school, I felt on the one hand like almost cocky, like I was doing great. I was going to conquer the world. I had awards. I had a gallery courting me, and I was like all ready to start my career. And I realized that, I sat down with my dad's accountant, and he, in his office, all of those awards and all of that sort of like promise that I held as an artist wasn't visible on paper, right? And so when he looked at my numbers, they didn't look like much at all. And he said to me, "When are you going to get a real job?" And it just felt to me like I just felt like I was nothing in that environment. And it filled me with shame that I hadn't even thought to have before. And I think it gave me a bit of an allergy to money altogether, because I felt like, oh, this isn't even a safe place to be. So yeah, I feel like this book is something that needs to exist in the world, because people like us who do creative work, we're doing it because we see the value in it. And I just want people to feel seen for doing amazing, creative, passion-driven work.
Mm-hmm. What I love about this book is it's really simple and straightforward, and it's very kind. It's easy to approach taxes. And even though I went to college for business and all of that, it's still struggle with numbers and it still feels intimidating. How did you pull into some of your experience with creative communities when you were writing this book? What were you thinking about? Who were you thinking about writing this for?
I really think of this book as for, honestly, just people who are self-employed. So I think a lot of people who are fine artists like myself are attracted to my work because they can see, oh, she knows me. And I do think that fine artists really struggle in particular because we really can struggle to have a profit. And that puts us in this very dangerous position vis-a-vis the IRS. But creative people who feel more passionate about their work, driven by a mission, maybe that their work feels more like a calling or an identity, I think those are my people. And that sometimes looks like a spiritual healer. Sometimes it's somebody doing care work. Sometimes, I have clients who are all kinds of just like people who do not fit in a perfect box. I have like one client who's a sex toy model, and one client who, they're doing all kinds of interesting, bizarre, weird, niche things. And I think that's wonderful. I think the world needs that stuff.
There's also a lot of funny moments in this book, which is kind of delightful because you go to read a tax book and you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this, but I really enjoyed it as well. And there's a dominatrix throughout the book. Can you talk a little bit about that character and why you pulled that in?
I put a dominatrix in the book because partly from just my tax practice, it's called sunlight tax. And I sort of jokingly think of it as 95% sunlight and 5% dominatrix. Because at the end of the day, I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to feel loved and seen and valued. And I want you to have the space you need to handle your money. But at the end of the day, your taxes are due, and the payment is due on April 15th. And so there are some boundaries that exist for good reason. And, got to get those papers in at a certain point.
You mentioned feeling, humiliated in past experiences around money. Are there any specific moments outside of that time in your dad's accountant's office that stand out to you?
My partner is in the room with us here as we're recording. I've certainly felt probably the most personal shame just having fights with my partner over our taxes, because I was the messy one. I wasn't very organized, and that did not help things. Like, he had a lot rightfully to blame me for. He's a very kind and gentle person who's not shamey, but I didn't feel good. And also, I just felt like I was sort of dragging the family down. So, yeah, honestly, just like tax time every year for a long time was super painful. And it was just the source of fighting.
And I think a lot of creatives can relate to the feeling of shame around it, around money. Why do you think the shame sticks so deeply with creatives and self-employed people in particular?
I think everyone that I work with has some money shame. Every single person I've ever worked with thinks they're the only one who doesn't get it. Like they think everybody else knows how to handle money and be good with money and knows all the rules, all the tax rules. The fact is, we don't have a tax education in this country. And so most people come into it not knowing. And we internalize that as though it's our fault, but it's actually systemic. And I think that's actually an important point that I make a lot in the book is that there are systemic things giving you feelings that actually are much bigger than just you and I. And I actually want to surface those things for people, put them in context, and make it feel like, hey, these are things that we can address. We can teach taxes in high school. I think we should.
I think we should too. I think that would be super helpful. Yeah, and taxes are a culture, you say, not just paperwork. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, taxes are culture. I think we want, I mean, speaking of shame, speaking of the opposite of sunlight, we want to put taxes in a corner that's dark and far away and say they're all bad. And we actually I have a chapter in the book called Deprogramming from Our Corporate Overlords. And there are actual forces like focus grouping, workshopping, phrases for us to use about taxes to make them framed in a way that works to the advantage of very large companies and billionaires, people with private jets and caviar bars, and not for us, people who are, just want affordable healthcare and good public schools. And so I think when you think of taxes as building the culture you want, it doesn't make you want to slash them all. It doesn't make you, nobody loves preparing a tax return, and that's okay. You don't have to. But I do think it's important to think about the trade-off. Okay, great. Everybody wants to eat dessert all the time and drink to excess. But if that's all you do, how are you going to feel? I think if all you do is cut taxes and you only elect people who promise to cut taxes, well, great. You don't want schools. You don't want healthcare. You don't want the things that taxes build for us. They actually reflect our values as a culture. And so I think it's important to think about what is that culture we want to build.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you have this secret agenda of helping create or encouraging creative people to be more generous with themselves and make more money and support themselves and feel good about wanting to make more money.
Yeah. That's who I love. I love the people in this room. I love being around people who care about stuff and are passionate about what they do and are generous with other people. And I think the issue, the other side, the dark side of that is we're often not as generous with ourselves as we are to others. And in a way, that's what the dominatrix is about. She's your protector, right? Like boundaries are self-love. And I just want to sort of highlight that I think that's an important piece. But also just when it comes to taxes, there's all these benefits in the tax code that I only learned about when I went back to school to study accounting. And I sort of was like, oh, wait, no one I know are using these things. Like there are tax sheltered accounts that you can make your money go further. And I think if creative people and passionate people everywhere were really using these the way they were designed to actually help us with those big ticket, difficult to save for things like retirement and school, education, healthcare, we'd be thriving. And so I just wanted to bring that information to people and help, I guess, normalize that idea of like, yes, us being generous to ourselves the way that we would be generous to a friend.
It's so true. Passionate and creative people, they can sell somebody else's work all day, every day. But when it comes to selling their own work or raising their prices or actually paying themselves for what they're doing, I find that to always be a struggle.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to point out, like, you have this wonderful podcast, the Success with Jewelry podcast. And I'm sure that that's part of the struggle that you have teaching, like serving people in the creative craft community is like how to talk about yourself, how to put yourself up in front, how to tell your story. I mean, it's a sort of similar and related issue.
so many people feel uncomfortable doing that and feel uncomfortable with making money and wanting to make money and taking care of themselves. So I think, something I love about the conversations we've had before with my community is just how straightforward you are with the information and how you take every question that is asked and answer it and take it very seriously. And I think that's really special because a lot of times, when you are a creative or passionate person and you're entering a business sphere or have questions about money or taxes or numbers, it's very intimidating.
For sure. And I think a lot of people like us, yeah, we might have sort of feelings up front that are difficult with money. And we also may have developed allergies along the way to money or even being around people who teach us about money because we've had shaming experiences like I did with my dad's accountant. And so it doesn't feel good to even put yourself in that space.
So, for creatives who are kind of feeling that way too, what would be the smallest, kindest step forward?
The smallest, kindest step forward, I think, is really to think of your creative practice as a business that is fully entitled to all of the benefits and subsidies that U.S. businesses get, which is a lot. You're allowed to take losses. You're allowed to have a startup phase where you are not yet profitable, and that actually gives you a tax benefit. A lot of people don't even take startup expenses. They don't even realize they're allowed to do that. The book has a great chapter on startup expenses because it's a thing that I see people miss out on all the time. So yeah, I think just really realizing that even if you are a badass anti-capitalist, in your tax return, you're a business. And so go for it. Take the advantage that is given to you.
You also believe that mission-driven, ethical people should have more money. We kind of talked around this a little bit, but how does understanding taxes actually support the bigger changes they want to see?
I mean, I talk about this a lot. I think there's two sides to taxes. There's paying them. That's your civic duty and it's not optional, right? You have to. And then there's the optional side of civics, which is, so if taxes are how they're the bricks that we use to build the structures we want to have in our culture, they express our values as a culture. The other side of that is the civic engagement where you elect the people who you want to be building those buildings, right? In this room right now is my friend Maggie Ullman, who is running to be reelected for city council here in Asheville. And I say all the time, local politics, you have such a big say. Your voice is so big when it gets to the local level. We all read big national papers and podcasts, and we all know what Ezra Klein just said about some issue. But do you know who's running for city council and that the primary is in March? I think those local elections, they actually take a lot of the rancor out because everybody needs their trash collected and having clean water is really not partisan. So I think knocking on doors for a candidate you really believe in, like I do for Maggie, I think that is part of that optional side of civics that's so important that I think it's easy to forget, get busy, and disengage from. Mm-hmm. And then we leave it to the billionaires who are never going to disengage from it. And they get to teach us all that we want to cut our own healthcare, cut our own public schools, and things we don't actually support.
I love a local election. I love voting in a local election. Let's talk about Asheville and Helene, because you lost your studio in Hurricane Helene. What did that teach you about resilience? Were you in the middle of writing this book then? Did that affect this? How did you bring in those learnings to this book?
Yeah, I had written a draft of this book, or most of this book, when Helene hit and destroyed my studio and the 20 years of art that was inside it. It's a big, ugly thing for me. I'm not through it. I'm still raw about it all. My book deal almost died because of Helene, but I just knew that this book was so important. I feel so personally fulfilled by being able to serve amazing creative people. And this book was so close to the finish line. And it was 4 months from my manuscript deadline that Helene hit. And my brain just turned to oatmeal for 2 months. I was in total trauma and I could not form a sentence. But I frankly brought out the dominatrix. I got, as soon as I could get to my email, and I saw that my publisher had put my book on hold, I like, you know, set the keyboard aflame writing and being like, whatever it takes, I will. If I need to solve cold fusion, I will get my manuscript in on time. Do not put this project on hold.
What's one mistake that you made that ended up teaching you something?
A mistake I made that ended up teaching me something. Oh my gosh.
It's a big
It's
question.
actually, there's too many things to pick from. I think not having a separate business bank account certainly made things horrible because I used to just print out bank statements with personal and business stuff all jumbled together. And I would have a highlighter and I would like hope my husband didn't like walk in while I was in the middle of it because it was so embarrassing and so messy. And I'd be like highlighting trips to Lowe's. Like maybe that was for my studio, I think, and that was really stressful. Even just, I think there are people who assume that because I teach taxes that I'm like good at systems and good at money and just a spreadsheet ninja. And I am not. I'm the opposite of that. And I think that's why I'm good at teaching this stuff because I hate doing it. And I understand people who hate doing it. I'm not the accountant where it all came easily to him. And he's like, why don't you get it? I'm like, yeah, this sucks. But let me help you make it a little easier.
For everyone who reads this book, what is the biggest thing you want them to take away from it?
I think of this book almost like in 3 parts. If you think of it like a body, I think the muscles and the flesh, like most of the substance, is to help you do your taxes. This book is, my goal is for the tax industry to hate me and to want to come after me because it undercuts TurboTax. I want people to just be able to do their taxes by themselves without paying extra money. But I think that the heart of this book is making people like me, people like us, people who are creative and passionate and do things not for money, but for love, making us feel worthy and seen. And then I think the spirit of this book is that civic engagement, that like you are a part of something when you pay taxes and you are building something. Let's think about what you want to build. And actually, we can do this together.
What do you hope this book builds? Do you want to bring people together to learn about taxes, support each other more? Are you building a community with it?
I definitely want to build community. I mean, I can't believe how many people read my little tax newsletter that I send out every Tuesday. But I think it feels like a community to me already. And it feels really exciting to talk to people who have felt invisible for a long time and unseen in accounting spaces and unvalued in the world of, taking advantage of tax things, sort of like being good at taxes is for people over there. And so, yeah, for sure, I feel unbelievable love for just the creative, passionate weirdos who do things for love, maybe not because they make much money at all.
Mm-hmm. There's so much I've learned from you. One of the things that I think is the top tip that you give when you start talking to, when you've talked to my communities is the learning from your mistake of having 2 different accounts, but also just setting yourself up for the future and retirements and how you can get tax breaks by following some of the rules and learning more about taxes. So I've learned a lot from you. What's one thing you wish every creative person knew about themselves when it comes to money and worth?
I think what I want every passionate and creative person to know is that even if you are making bespoke latex dog costumes, your business is worthy and that you deserve everything the tax code has built to give you, which is a lot more than you might realize. And that includes saving for your future and investing in yourself.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about your book that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think you did a beautiful job of asking me so much, but let me just say that I took a liberty with the book. I wanted to write a book that was going to help people do their taxes. I understand that's why you're buying the book, and it delivers. It also delivers, I think, more because there's sections that we hope you never need. But there's a whole section called Oops. And there's, like what to do if you accidentally marry a con artist, what to do if you need to file an amended return because you made a mistake. Like there's lots of like things that we hope you never need. But if you do, if you can't pay your tax bill, those things are in there. But the liberty I took with this book was I just felt if I am going to do the work of getting people to a place where they kind of understand the context of their taxes and holistically how their taxes work and they feel empowered about them, I want to also bring in that feeling of like, we're building a community with this. And here's what a group you might not agree with is trying to program you to think about this. Here's how to counter program from it. And here's how to actually know what a fair tax law looks like. And actually, here's one idea. I could have made a list of 10 things we could do, but I just wanted it to be easy where you could just go have a Thanksgiving conversation and like tell your family, fund the IRS, collect the $600 billion a year that is currently simply going unpaid by wealthy tax cheats because they get us to hate the IRS and not fund collections, right? That's an easy solve. So I think, getting people on board with this sort of tax policy, I realize is a really big ask, but I was like, I'm not going to write this whole book and miss the chance to put it in there. It's only like 12 pages.
How do you feel now that you've worked so hard on this book for so many years? How do you feel that it's out in the world now and we're at your book launch party?
I feel so thrilled to see the faces of these beautiful people. I think the thing that excites me most is the idea of each one of you reading this book and then telling me what you thought. And that includes out in podcast land. I want to hear if it lands with you the way that I hope.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Liz, so much for being here. And if it's all right, I would love to say a huge thank you to you, Liz. Please listen to the Success with Jewelry podcast. Liz is an amazing, supportive person for creative craft artists, especially jewelers. Thank you to Matt Peiken. I want to shout out Matt Peiken as a sponsor for this event because he's doing something, speaking of civics, that is so important. He is doing local journalism. He's a real journalist. He's trained. He's amazing. He has a daily podcast, Wake Up Asheville, that just, it's like 4 minutes. I put it on, I brush my teeth and wash my face, and it's over. And it just like tells me the local headlines. And if you're going to know about local politics, you need to have local news. And so I think what Matt is doing is so important. I also want to thank Tracy Morgan for hosting us in the Tracy Morgan Gallery. Tracy's been representing me and my art for almost a decade and was particularly supportive when I lost my studio in Helene. And so I just give a big shout out to Tracy. Thanks for letting me use this space and just for being my gallerist and supporter for a long time. Yeah.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. It really helps. I'm so grateful. My tax guide, Taxes for Humans, is available wherever you buy books and at sunlighttax.com/book. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.